Oh, we're on the doorstep of February, but PewterPirates.com's podcast, A Few Extra Bucs, Motors On. We're going to keep motoring on throughout the offseason. It should be an exciting offseason with Bruce Arians, and the Bucs have a lot of optimism moving forward. I'm Mike Neighbors. I'm going to bring in our producer, Justin Thomas, and our Buccaneer insider, Roy Cummings, in just a bit. We're going to have a lot to touch on, even though it is early February. We're going to talk Super Bowl, give you a Super Bowl preview, our predictions. Desean Jackson back in the news again. Carson Palmer giving Bruce Arians a nice endorsement. And we'll wrap up the Senior Bowl. So a lot to get to. Justin Thomas, are you excited about the Super Bowl? How are you feeling this time of year?
This year, I don't know. I think after the way the Saints lost, look, I'm over the Patriots. And the Rams are a young team. I actually picked them to go to the Super Bowl, but I don't know. I hope it's an exciting game. I guess that's all you can hope for at this point.
Yeah, I feel that I just want a good game if I don't care. I just want a good game. Roy, how are you this time of year? It's kind of a weird year covering football, but you've covered this Buccaneer team for a long time. There's never really a slow part in the NFL anymore, but I know we're kind of on the doorstep of the Combine, just finishing up the Senior Bowl. How do you evaluate this time of year, covering a Bucs team?
It's often the same. Usually at this time of year, you're usually, still looking for a new head coach, waiting for him to be announced, or as we are in this case, kind of waiting for him to kind of make some of their first moves. It seems like we're always in the midst of a coaching change. Every other year it seems to be that's the case. So, renewed optimism. Everybody's, kind of looking at the Super Bowl as kind of this dream sequence that, we were there once, and if they could somehow get back there, boy, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? But most people, their eyes are already towards the draft. The Super Bowl is kind of something that, kind of whets your appetite a little bit, keeps you interested until, we can get into draft season and free agency, because that's really where Bucs fans are most focused now. They're focused on how do we rebuild this team and try to give us, in a way that gives the Buccaneers a chance to be in that big game, because it's been, again, it's been so long since they've been there now, and only been there once in 40 plus years. So it's a tough deal.
I think it's a good time to be a Bucs fan, though, because I hear a lot of Bucs fans say this, and I kind of thought this when Bruce Arians was first hired, that they are the most optimistic they've been coming into the month of February, maybe since John Gruden was hired. And that's a long, long time ago. But it's hard to find anybody that's not excited in the Buccaneer fan base about Bruce Arians. And I think that's exciting, but sometimes that can be dangerous, Roy, too.
It can, and you're right, because I think look, this time 3 years ago, I guess it was, everybody felt the same way about Dirk Cutter. It was like, yeah, we're doing the right thing with the Buccaneers because, Dirk Cutter, built this really good offense, and he's got the right, he knows how to deal with Jameis Winston, and we're keeping continuity together. And boy, if we can keep Mike Smith, well, we'll be on our way. And it didn't work out. And I remember when Lovie Smith came, it was the same thing. Hey, Lovie Smith, a professional head coach, ties to Tampa. He's going to fix this thing up, change it around. It's not going to be like it was with Greg Schiano. And, when Greg Schiano got here, this is the way it needs to be, because, he's so much different than Raheem Morris, and, blah, 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 and on and on and on. And, everybody wants to put a positive spin on things and hope that, change is always for the better, but it often isn't. And the Bucs, I think, can speak to that reality. The change is not always for the better. And in fact, a lot of times it just digs you deeper into the hole that you're already trying to get out of. And I think that's what's happened with Tampa Bay. So, this one, though, feels different. It really does. Look, I've said it. I think this is the best coaching hire the Bucs have made. And I mean this, since Tony Dungy. And I understand when they hired Tony Dungy, they didn't really know what they were getting. He was a third choice. Nobody really knew who he was outside of some of the deepest NFL circles. So you could say John Gruden, but, they really weren't sure where you go with John Gruden either. John Gruden hadn't done anything that Tony Dungy hadn't done. He hadn't gotten the Raiders to the Super Bowl. Granted, it was a bad call that might have cost him in one of those attempts, but John Gruden also tore the team apart after he got him to the Super Bowl. So I think this is the best hire the Glazers have made since Tony Dungy. I'm confident that it's going to work out in the short term. It's not a long-term fix, but maybe the long-term fix is part of this group, and I think that's something that's important.
Okay, we don't get a lot of headlines this time of year because free agency is still down the road a little bit, kind of in the middle of evaluating the draft. We'll get to the Senior Bowl in just a second. But one of the big headlines recently, Desean Jackson, D-Jack's back in the news on a podcast, basically saying, you know what? I'm going to paraphrase my man. I got a year left in Tampa, but I'd really like to play with the LA Rams. You know what, D-Jack's, my guy, can they just trade this guy, Roy? I don't want this guy on the football team next year. I just don't.
I'll tell you what, D-Jax is hurting his. I don't want him on the team either. I think they can do better in terms of a person, a character in the locker room. I think they can do better in terms of people who just want to be here, obviously. Can they do better in terms of speed and talent? Probably not. But you can do better in a lot of other ways that are, intangibles that are important, a big part of the equation, really. So I'm right there with you, my friend. I feel that this guy's got to go. And you know what? Here's what Desean Jackson doesn't understand. By saying those kind of things, he hurts the trade value. He hurts his own trade value because now everybody knows that he wants out. So the Buccaneers, their options are going to be even more limited now because you don't really have any leverage. Everybody knows that this is a guy who wants out of Tampa. He'll gladly take a release if the Bucs grant it to him, and the Bucs will probably be forced to do that because now I can't see him getting any more than a 5th-round pick at best for this guy. Because again, he's a talent, but the new team's going to want to restructure the contract. They're not going to pay him $10 million. The Bucs don't want to hold on to him for that, is my guess. So it's a real issue, and he's hurt himself. And he's hurt his agenda in terms of trying to get out of here. So it just goes to show you really what an idiot Desean Jackson is. Not only is he a bad teammate, but he's turned out to be a pretty bad businessman too in this term. So he doesn't help himself, and he doesn't help the Bucs in this at all.
A guy like Desean Jackson has just lived in this bubble for his whole life, basically his whole professional life. So I agree, he hurts his trade value and all that. A guy like that doesn't care. A guy like that doesn't. I mean, to me, he also hurts Jameis Winston. You saw it on the field. And you know how Jameis is a pleaser. He wants to please everybody. Just get him out of there. Yeah, he'd be great in this offense if he was a team guy. And Bruce Arians probably feels like he can fix him because Arians has fixed a lot of guys in his coaching career. But, man, give that guy a one-way ticket out and just man, if they can just get a mid-round pick for him, just get him the hell out of here. All right, another story, speaking of Bruce Arians, is Carson Palmer told the NFL Network this week he loves the Arians-Winston marriage, and he thinks the Bucs will be a winner next year, win at least 9 games. Now, I know Carson Palmer is biased, but just another example of Bruce Arians having quality references, Roy Cummings.
Yeah, it is. And, look, you're right. He's a little bit biased, but at the end of the day, he's a smart guy. And he's played for the coach. He's worked with the coach. He knows the coach. He knows Jameis Winston. Just quarterbacks tend to, run together with, in off-season things and like that. So, look, I believe Carson. I believe him a lot. I think he's absolutely on the mark here. His enthusiasm is matched by a lot of people with the Buccaneers right now, and I think rightfully so. So it's a solid endorsement. I like it. Hey, maybe he's lobbying a little bit to be a part of things here. For all we know, it's quite possible. Considering that I'm not sure he knows what his future is in Oakland these days. So. Hey, it's good stuff that somebody out there who I think a lot of people like as a quarterback believes in the marriage between Bruce Arians and Jameis Winston. Says a lot.
I used to work in Tuscaloosa, and it's amazing to me. Back in the mid '90s, we may have talked about this on a past podcast, but I read more about it this time around. That at one point in 1997, remember Mike DuBose, the head coach of Alabama, he replaced Gene Stallings.
Sure do, yeah.
Okay, on that staff, he had Freddie Kitchens was his quarterback, who's now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. He had a wide receivers coach named Dabo Sweeney, and he turned out pretty good. And then he had an offensive coordinator, Bruce Arians. Now, in '97, they weren't having a winning season. Their only saving grace was they could become the first Alabama team to ever win in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And it all came down to a 3rd and 8 call. They were on their own 30. Arians was the offensive coordinator, could have just ran out the clock, right? but he had Kitchen throw a pass play, threw it to the fullback. The fullback fumbled the ball, and they lost the game. Auburn recovers, kicks the game-winning field goal. You know how crazy it is in that state. 4 days later, Bruce Arians is fired. His next job was with the Indianapolis Colts, and he mentored some rookie named Peyton Manning. You know what? That should be an inspiration to any coach who gets fired out there, to any coach who has a bad year. And I remember Bruce Arians in the opening press conference here in Tampa, because I wanted to ask him about that. And this is what I like about Bruce Arians is I said it was almost about the same day that Freddie Kitchens was named the head coach of the Browns. And I said, I used to cover Freddie Kitchens. It's amazing the circle of life in the NFL. And Bruce Arians, without pause, said, yeah, my memory of those days was me getting fired. But you know what? That's what you like about Bruce Arians is the guy can always rebound. And that should give, to me, a lot of coaches hope when you see that kind of story.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a very good example of a guy who's been knocked down a few times, picked himself up, dusted himself off, and moved on to better things. And it seems like everywhere he goes, he gets better and better at it. Look, he was never going to be fired by Arizona. No. He decided to retire, and that's a move that's obviously helped out the Buccaneers in a big way because who saw that coming? We may have seen him retiring, but coming out of retirement, that was a bit of a surprise too. So, and the Buccaneers have clearly benefited from that. At least it seems that they have now. I think we'll be saying the same thing a year from now when maybe we're talking about a Buccaneers team that just missed the Super Bowl, or who knows, maybe is in it for all we know. I'm not ready to go that far and predict that, but I don't think they're that close. But they're ready to be a playoff team, I believe, and I think Bruce Arians can get them there.
Well, let's move ahead. I want to get your thoughts on the draft. We're going to get to the Super Bowl. We're going to have 3 and Out coming up. But, you covered the Senior Bowl for years. I've covered it for years. But when you have the top 5 pick, Roy, you may not get a senior. There may be a run an underclassman. I think the key, before we break down the Senior Bowl and look back at the week that was in Mobile, I think the key for the Bucs is they better hope a lot of these young quarterback prospects look good in the combine coming up. And look good in their workouts, because I think that will have teams trading up, and the Bucs at number 5 could get a lot of picks out of that. I think that's the kind of obvious scenario because it's deep this year in a lot of areas. I think the Bucs are looking at if they can trade down and get some picks. Unless they have that guy they want, I think they got to root for a lot of these young quarterbacks to do well.
They do. I think they can stay at number 5, and someone will come to them looking for a quarterback, perhaps. That. They're in that spot. They're in kind of a good spot there, in my opinion. I think that's something that could happen for them. But I'll say this. I'm not a big fan of giving up the 5th overall pick to get the 8th overall pick, right. Necessarily. I understand the value of adding draft picks. I'd rather see them package, a couple of 3s and a 2 to possibly move back into the first round. I'd rather see them do that. They do need a lot of pieces, but well, you got a shot at the 5th best player overall, and you're a team like the Buccaneers. I think you probably have to take advantage of it as best you can, and so I'm anxious to see how that works out for them. But no, I think it's a really an exciting time for the Buccaneers in a lot of ways. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Well, let's look at the Senior Bowl. I know we touched on it in our last podcast. I think a lot of people help themselves, and we've seen it, in recent times with the Bucs. Ali Marpet was the guy that kind of helped himself. But anything stand out about the week in Mobile for you?
Well, a couple of players the Bucs might be looking at. Obviously, look, they need help in the secondary. There's no doubt. Look, we all know that they're probably focused on the trenches primarily. But, they're probably going to add a running back here in the offseason. Might be through free agency, might be through the draft. There's a kid named Tony Pollard out of Memphis who had a real nice game and a pretty good week of practice too. And he's a guy who probably helped himself out a little bit here at the Senior Bowl. So that's a name to keep an eye on. Tony Pollard, kid out of Memphis, 8 carries, 60 yards, and a touchdown during the game. Because scouts don't watch the game as much as they watch the practices, but it is about what you do on Saturdays and Sundays here. So he's a tough running back, runs inside, runs outside. He's a guy I think to keep an eye on. There were a couple others there. Dexter Williams from Notre Dame, Karen Karan, I guess Higdon is his name, running back out of Michigan. He's another one you want to keep an eye on. But Tony Pollard was the one who kind of stepped up come game day. Another guy, Nasir Adderley, is a Delaware safety. He had a good week of practice. And he was playing a little bit in the slot, but he's a safety by trade more than anything else. He ended up having a pretty good game himself. So these are a couple of names to keep an eye on. We're not talking early rounds necessarily, but maybe third, fourth, fifth round is when you can get some of these guys. And maybe these are some guys who are moving up the draft board a little bit. See how they look at the combine, see what teams think about them when they get them down in the meeting rooms and talk to them. But those are a couple of guys to start keeping an eye on. Again, Nasir Adderley out of Delaware, a safety. Tony Pollard, a running back out of Memphis.
Yeah, we'll get a lot better feel for the Bucs draft, I think, after the combine because they have that 5 pick, and you would think a lot of underclassmen are going to be in that pool. Not as many seniors, but we'll see. I mean, those are some interesting names to watch for sure. Okay, let's talk about the Super Bowl. And before we get to the Rams against the Patriots, often I don't ask you about things before we start the podcast. But once upon a time, when the Bucs won a Super Bowl, they had a quality control coach named Sean McVay. Roy Cummings, covering a team, you usually pay attention to guys like that. Did you ever bump into Sean McVay in the hallway? Did you ever have any interaction? Do you even remember Sean McVay as a quality control coach?
It's easier to answer the last question. No, he was a name. And there was so much going on with that football team. We weren't paying a whole lot of attention to the quality control coaches, the guys who, in essence, ran copies and stuff like that, went and got lunch for the coaches, made sure that their coffee was, stayed hot, that kind of thing. No, I do not remember Sean McVay. Wasn't one of the things anybody was really focused on with that team at that time. But you know what? Look, everybody's got to start somewhere. Yeah. And Sean McVay, in a hurry, got on the fast track to an NFL head coaching position. And he's taken full advantage of every opportunity he's had. So, you know what? Very happy for him, very excited for him. He's done a great job already. He's got clearly made a name for himself. He can really top things off with a win this weekend, and anxious to see what happens there. He's got about as tough a job here this weekend as he's ever going to face, going up against Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, obviously with the Patriots. But hey, he's been in tough spots before, and he's obviously won more than he's lost. So anxious to see how he matches up against the genius.
Yeah, the genius, by the way, was in his mid-30s, and he was a defensive coordinator for the New York Giants when Sean McVay, wait for it, was born in 1986. So it's an amazing ride for Sean McVay and Bill Belichick. Sean McVay, I love the stories that I'm seeing. Back in 2009, Sean McVay was a tight ends coach for the Florida Tuskers in the United States Football League. I mean, it's amazing the ride and the dues that he paid, and good for him. I guess we're trying to, for you young coaches out there, you coaches who've had a tough year, we're trying to provide inspiration, whether it's, the Bruce Arians getting fired from Alabama and then going to Coach Peyton Manning. They got Sean McVay paying his dues. I remember Kyle Shanahan when he was the quality control coach for some reason under Gruden. So he had some definitely star power quality control guys over the years. I got to say this, Roy. We both covered a lot of Super Bowls, and I love covering it. I love the whole week. I think the week's fun, even leading up to the game. But I don't miss being in Atlanta because, to me, Atlanta has to be one of the worst Super Bowl cities to host a game. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I remember the last time it was there. It wasn't a fun week. It wasn't special. It's not a great place to hold a Super Bowl. I'm sure the facility's great, and it is. I mean, I've been there to the new stadium. It's a beautiful new stadium. You've been there, obviously, Mike. But yeah, and as far as playing the game, it'll be great. But for the week leading up to it, nah, not what you're looking for. I don't like that it's bouncing around as much as it is. Look, Miami's a great spot. Obviously, San Diego's a great spot. Los Angeles could be a great spot. New Orleans is a good spot. Tampa Bay is a good spot. Atlanta, not so good. Minneapolis, not so good. Detroit, not so good. You're really I get it. You reward teams for building new stadiums and stuff, but it's just I think you got to think about everything that goes on around the Super Bowl. It's not just about the game, because the game takes place on Sunday. There's an awful lot leading up to that, and you got to have. And look, they've got everything you need in Atlanta, but it's just not great. I mean, what are you going to do? Go tour the Coke plant? I don't know.
Just stay as far away as you can from the airport and any kind of traffic in Atlanta. To me, Atlanta's, in my opinion, is one of the cities I would not want to live in. Atlanta, Washington, D.C., I don't know. Those two kind of stick out like a sore thumb to me. The traffic in those cities is just unbearable. And when you're covering a Super Bowl and you want to get around, I don't know. I'd like to be there. Don't get me wrong, but I'm glad, like you said, it's not there often. I'd actually rather cover Super Bowl in Jacksonville than Atlanta. How about that, Roy?
Yeah, I hear you.
Right. I'll get around a lot easier in Jacksonville. Anyway, all right. Well, let's talk about the game. I'm gonna start off by saying, I'm going to adopt the Nick Saban principle when you talk about this game, because I've seen in recent memory college football championship games. Oh, I'm not going to bet against Saban. And I see the same thing with the Patriots. I'm not going to bet against Brady. I'm not going to bet against Belichick. I just see something about the Rams this year. They're a team of destiny. I think they're the team of destiny. They got the call in New Orleans. I just think McVay, it's his time to shine. Belichick and Brady have big time overachieved. I think the AFC is far inferior to the NFC in a lot of ways, but the Rams are my pick. I think they win the Super Bowl. I think it's a coming out party for Jared Goff. Sean McVay, he's already a star on the rise, but I think the Rams are going to win this game. I do.
Tell you what, it's interesting that you say that, because I couldn't disagree more.
Wow.
The team of destiny is the Patriots, and, because that's a team that nobody really. I think a lot of people thought, they'll probably win their division, but how good are they going to be when they get to the playoffs? Not a lot of people gave this team a lot of credit, thought they would go very far. I mean, it's fueling Tom Brady like we've never seen it fuel this kind of thing fuel him before. He's leading cheers here. We're still here. We're still here. I mean, he's taking this stuff personally, and I think it's almost made him a better player. And I think the whole team feels that way. I think it's going to be Gronk's last game, and I think he's going to play his butt off in it. Belichick, I think, really wants this one. I get a sense that the Brady, Belichick, Gronk, the whole group wants this one more than any of the others they've had, because I think they feel like they've been doubted more over the last couple of years than ever before, obviously, and I think they're just relishing the fact that they're proving everybody wrong. I really do, and to be honest with you, I may be proven wrong on this, but I just don't see Sean McVay matching wits with Bill Belichick. Look, Andy Reid couldn't do it, and I don't think Sean McVay is there. I just don't. Sean McVay's a brilliant mind, but he's not Bill Belichick, and I think Bill Belichick's going to find out a way. Look, and I'll say this. I think the Rams are the more talented team. I think they've got the better running backs. They don't have the better quarterback, but I think they probably got the better defense. They've got a lot of players that are just playing better. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the coach and the quarterback in this game, and nobody's better than those two.
Well, here's my thing on that. I feel that the New England Patriots, to me, I kind of, if there's a rooting interest, I'm rooting for Tom Brady. I'm a big Tom Brady fan, and I find myself defending him over and over and over again. I know people get jealous of Tom Brady, but I guess I can't say I don't understand the hate, because I do, because people get jealous. But the way Tom Brady works, I could see that guy playing for 2 or 3 more years at least. I mean, I see him just continuing to want this, and they always ask him, "What's your favorite ring?" and he says the next one. I hope that they do win. I just feel like there's something about this Rams team that's just, I don't know, like they're meant to be. Because frankly, I cover the New Orleans Saints. I wish it would have been Brady and Breeze. I wish it would have been Sean Payton, matching X's and O's with Bill Belichick, because Payton's the ultimate riverboat gambler. And I think it would have been interesting to have Brady and Belichick against Breeze and Payton. There's the 2 best head coach quarterback, the winningest combos in NFL history. So there's a lot of fun plot lines there. But I think McVay's ready. I think he's cocky enough to say, you know what? I'm ready for this moment. Doesn't seem frazzled by anything. And the way he turned that Rams franchise around quickly, you got to give him a lot of credit. I just wonder, Roy, how does Jeff Fisher feel watching all this?
I think Jeff Fisher actually feels pretty good because Jeff Fisher had a lot to do with building this Rams team. He wasn't able to finish it off and take them to the playoffs. But Jeff Fisher deserves a lot of credit. In fact, I'll be surprised if he doesn't get a ring should what you predict is going to happen. He helped build this team. A lot of these guys that are here now, Aaron Donald, Todd Gurley, Jared Goff, he brought them in. Didn't bring him Ndamukong Suh, but a lot of the other pieces are Jeff Fisher pieces. He laid the foundation for this team. I don't think Rams fans have necessarily forgotten that. A lot of them have, but not everyone has. And I don't think the Rams have forgotten that inside that building. I think he will be rewarded, and rightfully so, should the Rams do what you say they're going to do. But I'm kind of surprised to hear you predicting the Rams because, look, first of all, I'm not even sure they should be there. Number one, I don't think they were the best team in the NFC all season. I think it was the Saints, and I think the Saints proved that they were the better team actually on Championship Sunday as well. Had they taken a 21-point lead the way they should have in that game instead of a 13-point lead, I think by the way, at that point, I was seeing Sean McVay kind of getting his comeuppance there a little bit. He looked a little bit lost at that moment in the game, even when it was 13-0. He was wiping his brow because it was only 13 and not 21. I thought Jared Goff looked like a deer in the headlights for a lot of that game. I could see a lot of that happening come this Sunday too. We'll see how it goes, but I just look. I think these guys have met their match. I may be way off. I just think this Rams team, even though it's got a little bit more talent and better players in some key areas, particularly on defense, perhaps. I just think they've met their match when they're going to go up against the Patriots on Sunday.
Listen, I picked the Texans and the Falcons to be in the Super Bowl, so my gut has been off many times this year, my friend. But I will say this: there's something about this Rams team, and I think it's easy to kind of say, well, they're a year away because they haven't been there, and Tom Brady's been to a million Super Bowls and all that. The one thing I do want to see in this game, Tom Brady, please throw Nickel Roby-Coleman. Throw it his way early and often. I just want that guy just to shut the hell up. I am so tired of that guy. He's acting like he's a Pro Bowl or something. The only reason anybody knows your name, pal, is because you were part of the biggest no call in NFL history. As John Tortorella would say, shut your yap. I'm so tired of that guy. It's ridiculous.
I can see why you're tired of him, but from his standpoint, this is his opportunity.
Yeah.
Look, not a lot of people knew who Richard Sherman was, a few years back, and all of a sudden he started opening his mouth around the Super Bowl, and now look at him. He's got commercials on TV.
Yeah.
So look, I think it's take advantage of your opportunity. Even in the NFL, you may only get 15 minutes of fame. He's taking advantage of his 15 minutes. You got to make a name for yourself somehow, sometimes in this league. And here's a guy who did it. He's not the first. He won't be the last. Really, the spotlight is on him. So relish in it as best you can. Look, I appreciate his honesty. Let's not forget. Let's go back to Championship Sunday. He said, "Hey, sorry, Saints fans. The call's the call. It was definitely pass interference, but this one went my way. So good for me. I'm lucky, and I give him credit for that. He admits that he screwed it up. He made a mistake, but he's come out better for it or in a better situation. So now he's just trying to take advantage of it. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, he also got these Instagram posts the next morning. I like the fact that he owned up to it. But then he's like posting these videos of himself laying in bed laughing. And, Richard Sherman at least made plays. This guy just did a helmet to helmet and a PI in the same play, and he got away with it. To me, I don't know. I'll respectfully disagree.
Well,
just
I'll
go
tell
away.
you what. Okay, but here's where you get your revenge. Here's where you get what you want. He could really be exposed this weekend. Now, look, he's going to be isolated on TV a lot, and it's not just going to be about showing replays of the blown call. He's going to be matched up. And look, if he's truly a weakness, and he sure looked like a weakness on that play, on the big play that we're all talking about, Bill Belichick's going to take advantage of that. Tom Brady's going to take advantage of that. Julian Edelman's going to take advantage of that. That whole team is going to take advantage of that. And so he could, just sit back. You could get your wish here because he could get exposed in a bad way this Sunday. Because my guess is they're looking to throw right at that guy because the reason we haven't heard from him is because he's probably not that good. And he was out of position as it was, which is why he had to make the play he made. And he's just darn lucky he didn't get called for a penalty. So don't be surprised if he gets burned 2 or 3 times in this game on Sunday and it costs his team a touchdown or 2, and if not the game itself.
Bucks fans, you should have a fun if you have a no dog in the fight drinking game on Sunday. Every time they pick on Roby Coleman, you just have a drink on me. And I hope, don't drive. Please don't drive after that, please. I just hope the guy's exposed. I'm tired of him, Roy. Sorry, I had to vent. Okay, Justin, Roy says Patriots. I say Rams. You got to break the tie.
Ooh. Look, you were talking about the Rams being team of destiny, which is funny because a couple of weeks ago you were saying the same thing about the Saints.
They had a little officiating interference there.
Yeah, but
it blocks my.
So, you can't just switch to whichever team gets the most recent call, though, that goes their way.
Yeah, but when the team gets the biggest no call in NFL history, that may be destiny, Justin.
You may be right.
That's a good point. But I agree with Roy. I think Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, they've been here so many times. Yes, they haven't won every Super Bowl they've been to, but I think experience trumps all. I think, look, the Rams have a talented team. I tend to agree with Roy. They're probably, in terms of players, they have the more talented team. But I think Bill Belichick knows how to get the most out of his players. Tom Brady is Tom Brady. I really can't bet against the Patriots. So I'm leaning Patriots.
Did you guys see the video with Brady and he's kind of giving that smirk, like I told you so smirk, and Gronk's behind him kind of doing whatever Brady does? Did you guys see that video?
Yeah.
I loved that. I loved it. I loved it.
I'm telling you, I think they're more confident than they've ever been. I think they feel like, again, I think they feel they're the team of destiny.
Well, I just want to put my personal hex on the Rams because everything I predict goes to hell pretty much. So maybe that's why I'm thinking the Rams will win, because I don't want them to win. Maybe it's just my gut feeling. Well, we've done our Super Bowl predictions. Justin, you know what time it is. Yes, 3 and out, 3 questions, and we are out of here. And I'm going to start with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, guys, it looks like Tony Gonzalez, Ed Reed, Champ Bailey, they are gimmies. Maybe even, I don't know. There's a few others in there that may be gimmies too. Kind of looking at the list here, you have those 3 guys, but, some other guys that could probably be gimmies as well. As I look at my list, Isaac Bruce, possibly, Edgar and James, maybe. But I'm going to go to the dark horses. You look at guys in the secondary. You have John Lynch, you have Steve Atwater, and you have Ty Law. Justin, you need to go first. Of those 3 guys, I think one of them will probably get in. It's always tough at the safety position to get in, maybe besides kicker, one of the toughest positions. But John Lynch, Steve Atwater, Ty Law, if you had to pick one of those guys to make the final cut, to get his jacket and get into Canton, who would it be?
You think one of them has a chance to go in this time?
Yeah, all 3 could be denied, but if you're going to pick one of them, which one?
I'll go with John Lynch. I really liked him as a player. I thought he was really, really good. I think – I don't know. He'll probably get in eventually, so I'll go with him.
Roy, the thing I'm thinking is, a lot of people rip Lynch because he didn't have a lot of interceptions, but Atwater didn't have a lot of interceptions. Both very physical guys. Now, Ty Law, played for a lot of great teams. I mean, none of these guys could get in, but we know how hard it is to get in if you play these positions. I know Ty Law plays a little different position, but you have Lynch and you have Atwater and you have Law. If you had to pick one of those 3 to bet to get in this year, who would it be?
Well, I think I would gamble a little bit and bet John Lynch, and here's why. John Lynch is in his 6th year as a finalist, meaning that he's in the room on Saturday being discussed by the voters. And of all the other players who have ever been in the room 6 times, only one of them is not in the Hall of Fame. And
Oh, wow.
so I believe his time has come. Here, look at it this way. If you're good enough to be in that room for discussion on Saturday, meaning you're down in the final 15, if you're good enough to be in that room 6 years in a row, I think you're probably good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. So I'm going to say John Lynch. I think it's time. I think he's earned it. And I sure hope he gets it because there's no question he deserves it.
A great guy off the field. Speaking of good guys off the field, here's a name I'll throw out there. I hope he gets in. Injuries cost him, or he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Tony Baselli should be in the Hall of Fame. That guy's one of the best left tackles ever. I mean, I saw him covering the Jacksonville Jaguars up close and personal, shut down Bruce Smith. Some big time Hall of Fame guys Jason Taylor, he had a great game against a couple times at Jacksonville. So I hope Tony Baselli gets in selfishly. All right. I've always thought Jimmy Johnson should be in the Hall of Fame. I know he's kind of like a lot of these players. He didn't coach long enough, but he won a national title, and then he won Super Bowls in Dallas. And, obviously could have won more if Jerry Jones and he didn't get in the spat. Miami didn't work out for him as much. I'm going to give you 3 coaches here because a couple of these guys are kind of looked at as guys who could get in this year. But if these 3 coaches, who do you think is the Hall of Famer above the others? You got Tom Flores, who won a couple in Oakland. You got Don Coryell. Air Coryell did his thing in San Diego, never won a Super Bowl, but kind of changed the way offenses were played. And then you have Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson's not up this year. I think he should be in there. But of those 3, Flores, Coryell, and Jimmy Johnson, who would you pick?
Me first?
Yes.
You got some tough questions this time.
It's a new year. We're bringing it this year in 2019. Baby.
Really? What happened to softballs?
Billy Joel and Elton John, and yeah.
I guess so. I'm familiar with all 3, but I'm the most familiar with Jimmy Johnson. I really think he could have been a great coach if he would have stayed in the NFL and continued coaching. Although, like you said, Miami wasn't too great. That's a tough one. I think just based off of how much I know about him, I'm going to have to go with Jimmy Johnson.
Roy?
Yeah, I guess, based on the fact that he's won Super Bowls, it's Jimmy Johnson. But really, I mean, is that what you have to do to get to the Hall of Fame? You have to go to a Super Bowl. You have to win a Super Bowl. Is that it? I thought it was really about, when I think about Hall of Fame, I think about, and I didn't come up with this idea myself, but I've heard this from other people, and I believe it. I think, can you write the history of the game without this person? And, I think you can, you probably can't write the history of the NFL without Jimmy Johnson, I guess. But I know you can't write it without Don Coryell, because Don Coryell, as you said, Air Coryell, I mean, he revolutionized the game. He was way ahead of his time, guys. If he had come around today, he'd be the Sean McVay of today. With all these ideas, but he had them years and years ago. 3-6 in the postseason is his record. That's, I guess, what's kept him out of the Hall of Fame. But, again, I think we've seen over the years that in order to get to the Super Bowl and win it, you have to have a lot of things go your way. Even the Patriots have won a couple of games because other teams screwed up. They won one against Seattle because of one of the worst calls we've ever seen a head coach make in the Super Bowl. They won one in a couple of years ago against Atlanta because Atlanta had one of the biggest breakdowns ever, collapses ever in the Super Bowl. So, look, I think Don Coryell, yes, I don't know that you can write the history of football without writing about what Don Coryell did as the coach of the Cardinals and particularly the Chargers. 5 division titles as the Chargers coach. Led the league in passing 7 of 8 years at a time when, maybe that wasn't the way everybody else was playing, but he was ahead of his time. And for that, I think he belongs. I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever, one of the most innovative coaches ever. He deserves to be there.
So you don't think Brian Billick should be in the Hall of Fame?
No, I'm not going to put Brian Billick there. He's a good coach, but he's not Hall of Fame caliber. And by the way, Now the argument, and believe me, this is the way it is in that room, guys.
I was proving your point, by the way. Just if you won a Super Bowl, you shouldn't make it.
Exactly. But right now in that room, if you've won a Super Bowl, that gives you, street cred, or gives you room cred, I guess it is. Because in that room on Saturday, and all the votes leading up to it, if you're a coach who's won a Super Bowl, you automatically get consideration. It's why Tom Flores, I guess, is somewhat involved. I'm not sure Tom Flores is a Hall of Famer, but Don Coryell is, in my opinion.
All right, I'm going to be blasphemous. Roy's going to go crazy when I say this. I think Jimmy Johnson is not only so much better than those guys. I mean, to me, he not only a great coach, a great motivator, but he took a team that didn't win anything and quickly turned them around, not only by being a great coach, but he drafted well, did the Herschel trade. Forget Jerry Jones. I mean, Jimmy Johnson's the guy that turned the Cowboys around and should have been there to reap the rewards for years after that. I would take Jimmy Johnson in over Tony Dungy. How about that?
Ouch. I'm not doing that.
How about that?
Well, Jimmy Johnson didn't blaze a trail for a lot of other people that hasn't necessarily been crossed very much lately. But no. I'm not doing that. Jimmy Johnson didn't turn around an organization that had been in the dumpster fire for since its inception. Jimmy Johnson didn't do what Tony Dungy did, and he didn't have to fight the battles that Tony Dungy did in order to get to where he was either. And he didn't have all the elements that Tony Dungy. I mean, he had more elements really than Tony Dungy did. Tony Dungy came into a situation here in Tampa where he had virtually nothing. The team was ready to walk out, leave town almost. He had a lot of work to do. He had to build a franchise. He had to completely rebuild a franchise, and he didn't have a whole lot of tools to build it with. Just some real smart football people, and he took a lot of good chances. And you know what? He developed a defense that people are still playing to this day. It was a defense that dominated for a generation of teams. And Jimmy Johnson, I don't think there's any defense or offense that he put together. He just had a lot of nice players and he got the breaks and won a few games.
I got Roy fired up, Justin. I got him going. You know what, Roy? Let me ask you this. Let me reposition that, because I have a lot of respect for Tony Dungy and what he did. Definite trailblazer. Look at his great staffs. All those guys who went on to be great head coaches, from Herm Edwards to Mike Tomlin. We could keep going on and on. Lovie Smith, on and on and on and on. But if you were hiring a coach in the mid 1990s and you had a franchise, would it be Jimmy Johnson or Tony Dungy?
Tony Dungy.
Oh, really?
No question. It's not all about what you do on the field. It's about how you're respected in the community, doing it the right way. A lot of things have been lost in professional sports over the years. And one thing that's lost is that you do it the right way. You do it in a way that makes you proud in the community of the team that you build. It's all about the legacy. It's all about what you've left behind. And nobody's done a better job of that than Tony Dungy.
I'd hire Jimmy Johnson.
He's the most revered man in football outside of Bill Belichick, the most revered coach in football. And it's not all about what he did on the football field, and that's what makes Tony Dungy great.
I would hire Jimmy Johnson over Tony Dungy. I would hire him. I mean, to me, I see the whole picture there, but I think Jimmy Johnson, to me, I would hire him over Tony Dungy, especially back then. We will disagree on that. Okay, our last one, our 3 and out. Boy, the Super Bowl has all this fanfare, and you get these emails. Our friends at Wallet Hub sent me this email this week. The average cost of a ticket for the past 5 Super Bowls, $5,145.
Yikes.
The average cost for a 30-second commercial, $5.24 million. 1.38 billion chicken wings will be eaten during the Super Bowl weekend. I could go on and on and on. All right, Justin, this will be easier than Tom Flores and Don Coryell and Jimmy Johnson and Tony Dungy. What do you like better about the Super Bowl, the halftime show or the commercials?
Ooh, there was a time where I would have said the commercials, but the way everything's done today, I mean, they have commercials for commercials now. They release the commercials early. You can find them on YouTube way before they air. It's almost like the whole mystique of what they're going to show and, what they're going to do commercial-wise, all the spectacle. It's kind of lost its, I don't know, fun, I guess.
Mojo.
Yeah. So I would say halftime show, although the last couple halftime shows haven't been that great either. Why'd you? It's like you're picking the worst of the worst.
So maybe you could just say none of the above. Kind of like the officials in the NFC Championship game. Was it helmet to helmet, or was it pass interference, or was it none of the above? They chose C. You could choose C if you want to.
I don't know. How about I choose my favorite Super Bowl food? I'll just totally make my own category.
I'm going to get rid of this podcast this time.
You know what? Probably when it comes down to it, Mike, even though I'm not as excited as I used to be about the commercials, I still will be more excited this year to watch the commercials than to see the halftime show. So I'm going to go with the Super Bowl commercials there.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm going to go with commercials too, because in my opinion, the halftime show peaked at Paul McCartney, obviously.
I knew that was good.
You know, and there was an era there when they were hitting home runs with every, you know, halftime show they had. You know, when you had U2 and the Rolling Stones and Paul McCartney, obviously, you were nailing it. Okay, you know, and then it's gotten kind of weak since. So to me, it's the commercials, and it usually is the commercials. But you know, when you had acts like McCartney, Prince, U2, that kind of thing, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, you were nailing it. You were hitting it right on the money. By the way, Billy Joel's never done this, has he? So,
you know, but Bruno Mars was pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, he was. Exactly. I'd put him. He's the best of the last bunch.
Like how I changed the
but no, it's the commercials for sure for me.
You know, when Eli Manning was dancing with Odell Beckham, I almost fell out of my seat last year. You know, I know all the commercials can't hit, but you know you're going to get a couple good ones. And unlike any other sporting event out there, you're going to pay attention because you're just hoping, well, maybe the next round will be better because we've seen our fair share of great commercials. So I'm going to say commercials. Sorry I didn't say food, Justin. Sorry, sorry if those were too tough. I don't think Roy and I have ever gone at it as much in one podcast. But you know what? That makes for good podcasts, right, my friend?
That's right, buddy.
All right. Listen, we will see Justin Patriots, Roy Patriots. I'm going to say Rams, which definitely means the Patriots are going to win Super Bowl 53. Atlanta, enjoy it. Because you know what? You may never host another one again because everybody's going to have to experience that Atlanta airport. So good luck, media, getting out of Atlanta and all you fans as well. But that wraps up a Few Extra Bucs podcast here on pewterpirates.com. Please subscribe to our website. It's absolutely free. For Justin Thomas, for Roy Cummings, I am Mike Neighbors. We'll see you next time.